Good evening. This is Chandra Mohan, physiotherapist from Sri Samraj Physiotherapy Center, Dindivanam, Tamil Nadu. A warm welcome to all the participants for this exrxindia.org's webinar series 2, Webinar Premier League WPL 2020 in association with Sri Samraj Health Services Dindivanam, Fitness and Rehab India YouTube channel, Dr. Rupesh, Civic Health Studio, Chennai, Dr. Arnachalam Sairam Academy, Chennai. Today's topic is exercise prescription for pelvic floor muscles. Will be presented by Dr. Rajisha T.R. She is an assistant professor from St. John's Medical College, Bengaluru. I welcome volunteer Smriti Patki from Mumbai. Also, I welcome EXRX team pillars, Dr. Rupesh and Professor Duna. I welcome Dr. Rajisha to start the session. Please, madam, start the session.
Thank you so much, sir, for introducing me, and welcome to each and every one of you to this class. I'll right away start with what I want to talk. Pelvic floor muscle exercise prescription is something which have been overlooked by many of us. When we hear of pelvic floor muscle exercise, the first thing that comes into your mind is Kegel's exercise. That is the only thing. That's our knowledge. That is our limit also. But it's beyond that. There is a prescription criteria for each exercises, of which two I'll be explaining to you today. Before going into the prescription or the exercise mode, we need to know about the basic anatomy and the assessment of pelvic floor muscles also. So let me start with the first slide. This is the external reproductive anatomy. Okay, I just want to give you a brief introduction about the same, right? So you can see here, normally what we take the reproductive, external reproductive anatomy, if we take the whole part, right from this part is called as the triangle part. When you are seeing the person on a frontal plane, the triangle part is called as the mons pubis. Okay, from mons pubis all the way to your anus is called as the vulva. Okay, now we have labia majorum or ant minora. So this part is called as the majora, and this part is called as the minora. So this one, the whole part is called as the minora. Okay, and this is called as the majora. So majora and minora, how do you differentiate? Majora do have hair follicles in it. So it's very easy, and it's padded. Okay, so that is your majora. Minora is little more thin, skin flap like thing, okay, which extends to make the hood for your clitoris. Okay, now if you part the minora also, then you have something called as the vestibule. Okay, so this part, the whole of it is called as the vestibule. Now this vestibule has 6 openings in it. The first one is the urethral opening, this one. Okay, on both the sides of that you have paraurethral gland opening. Okay, also called as the Skinner's openings or Skinner's glands. Okay, this is called as the vaginal opening, and on both the sides you have Bartholin's gland. You can see this small 2 dots, that is called as the Bartholin's gland. So when you're doing an assessment, you will be needed to check all these places and note down any problem in these structures. Okay, this one part, okay, right from your end of the vaginal this thing to your anus is called as the perineum or the perineal body actually. Okay, so that is the external reproductive anatomy. Now we'll come to the pelvic floor muscles, right? Pelvic floor muscle is like a hammock. Okay, now the problem with pelvic floor muscle is that we are not seeing the muscle. We are not seeing the action of the muscle. See, if I want to train my biceps, I can see what is the action of biceps, and thus I can actually understand how it is working, and it is much more cognitively pleasable, okay, for the other skeletal muscles. Now the problem with pelvic floor muscle is it's not seen. Okay, but it is one of the most vital muscles of the body. Okay, it has many functions. It supports the organs of your pelvis. It actually takes parts in respiration as well. Okay, so the pelvic floor muscle, it actually has 3 layers. I'll come to the individual muscle later, but this one, the hammock-like structures, right from your pubic bone all the way to your coccyx, is your pelvic floor muscle. Okay, and in that muscle, if you see, there are 3 passages. One for your urethra. Okay, your urinary bladder is resting on the pelvic floor muscle, and the urethra passes through it. Okay, to the urethral opening. Now, the second one is for the uterus, okay? And the vaginal canal actually passes through the pelvic floor muscle and opens into the vaginal opening. And you can see the rectum and the anus, even that has a passage. Okay, so now coming to the muscles, I'm not going too deep into it, but I just want to talk to you about the major muscles. Okay, in the superficial layer, superficially, we have 3 very important muscles called as the ischiocavernosus, bulbospongiosus in men, and bulbocavernosus in females, and superficial transverse perineal. Okay, so these 3 muscles are very important, especially when you're treating sexual dysfunctions. Okay, we have to palpate these muscles and check if there is any spasm or trigger point or tenderness on these muscles. Okay, the activation of ischiocavernosus and bulbocavernosus actually can stimulate the clitoris. It can increase the amount of blood that goes into the clitoris. Okay, and now coming down, you can see this is the deep transverse perineal muscle. That is the second layer. This is the deepest layer. Okay, so that has your levator ani. So whenever we used to study in anatomy also, levator ani was all that is taught. In pelvic floor muscle, okay, you just have to know about levator ani. We studied that then and there and we forgot about it. Okay, but because we are not seeing it on a daily basis, we tend to forget it. Okay, so levator ani do have parts. Right, one is the whole muscle actually runs from your pubic bone all the way to your coccyx. Okay, but midway it do have fibers which rounds and gets rounded over this. Okay, so this is the pubic bone. There is some fibers which come all the way like this. Okay, this is your urethral opening and attach here. Right, so it takes a round around the urethral opening, so that is called as pubourethralis. The next one, all the way from pubis around the vaginal opening, that is called as the pubovaginales. Next one actually has 2 subdivisions still, so it comes from your pubis to the anal sphincter, that is called as the puboanalis. And 1 fiber goes into the rectum as well, okay, which is called as the puborectalis. So these fibers are being taken out, okay, from the major muscle, which passes all the way from your pubis to the coccyx. Okay, and you have your iliococcygeus as well. Okay, from the ilium to the coccyx. Okay, you can see this one, that is your iliococcygeus, and this one, the whole thing is called as your pubococcygeus. Both together we call it to be levator ani. Okay, I hope I am clear. Now going to the conditions that we need a pelvic floor muscle rehabilitation. Conditions can be divided on basis of the passages. Okay, so as you know, pelvic floor muscle has 3 passages. One is the urethral one, next one is the vaginal one, and the third one is the rectal one. Okay, urethral one, if there is any problem there, then it is called as the main clinical scenario that we get is a urinary incontinence. Now in urinary incontinence also there are two types, okay, or three types actually: stress urinary incontinence, urge, and a mixed type. Okay, now all these points are actually necessary, so when we come into the assessment I'll explain it little more in detail. Now as far as the vaginal opening is concerned, we have two problems. Okay, one is your sexual dysfunctions and one is your vaginal flatulence. Now this is a very embarrassment situation for the female. They will not tell, okay, that there is a vaginal flatulence which is happening to me. So you actually have to ask them when you're taking the history, when you're taking the chief complaints. Okay, so sexual dysfunction and vaginal flatulence is the main concerns as far as vagina is concerned. Sexual dysfunction also, it is the problem with the hypersensitive sensitivity. Okay, so what happens is in the vagina, in the vaginal canal, if you see the initial part, if this is the vagina, the initial part has all the sensory fibers, fine. So when the penis actually has an intercourse, then it actually stimulates all this, okay, all the sensory input, sensory nerve endings. Now if the vagina is not in its normal contour and it loses its contour, proper contour, and becomes lax, okay, and the penis goes in and out, but still the sensory nerve endings are not being stimulated. If sensory nerve endings are not being stimulated, our brain doesn't know when we are having an orgasm or no. Okay, so that also causes problems. That is called as the hypersensitive sexual dysfunctions, okay, which actually can manifest as an aversion towards sex. As you know, people will tell that, okay, we are not interested in sex at all after my kids. Okay, so if that after my kids come, then you have to actually think about the laxity of vagina also. I'm not telling that is the only reason, but that is one of the reasons. The rectal one, again, fecal incontinence is very common. It's very common, especially if there is a perineal tear. Okay, perineal body gets torn, then there are high chances of fecal incontinence. Okay, so now coming to the assessment. The subjective assessment, all of us know the normal assessment form itself. I'll be talking about specific things that we need to think about the gynecological point of view. Okay, so subjective assessment, you need the demographic data, what is the name and UHID and all those things too. I'm not going deep into it because we don't have time for that. Now the chief complaints, actually it's very tricky in taking chief complaints in patients, okay, in gynecology especially, because they will not say they have a problem because they themselves don't know. Okay, now chief complaint, if you are evaluating a person, okay, especially after delivery, that is, they come for a review at around 1 month and 3 months. Okay, so at 3 months point of time, if you're taking, you have to specifically ask them all these things. Do you have incontinence? Do you have emergency, like, you know, urge incontinence? You can't control it. You just want to go then and there. Okay, is that happening to you? Are you passing vaginal gas? Okay, or during sexual activity, is there a passage of gas from the vagina? So these questions you have to ask them and take the chief complaints, because it's very difficult to go through that barrier because it's being normalized. Okay, you could have already heard that, okay, my mother used to say after 2 delivery, it's okay, all right, all these things happen. No, it doesn't have to happen that way. Okay, and we can actually help them. So please ask them specifically if you're having any of these things, and are you suffering from any of these things. Okay, lots of counseling and moral support is also needed when you take the assessment in a gynecological case. Okay, now history, medical, surgical, and onco history has to be taken. Okay, in onco history, what is to be talked about, I'll tell you. Okay, so in OBGYN specific. When was the menarche achieved? Okay. What was the last menstrual period? When was it? Okay. Are your cycles regular or no? If it is irregular, then there can be possible causes for that as well. What is the marital status? Okay. Are you married or are you not married? What was the mode of conception, whether it was a spontaneous conception, natural conception, or was it a assisted conception? Number of pregnancies, how many times have you got pregnant? Okay, how many times have you undergone labor, or it is progressed into a labor stage? Okay, have you undergone vaginal delivery? Have you undergone assisted delivery? Have you undergone cesarean? I think Maria ma'am have already taken all these things, so I'll be just brushing about it. So all this history we have to take. Okay, were there any spontaneous abortions or miscarriages that happened to you in the past? Were there any stillbirth? How is the sexual life right now? Right now as well as before. Okay, so that we can compare it. Okay, so these are the main OBGYN specific things that you have to ask when you're taking the assessment, subjective assessment. Okay, objective assessment. On observation, we have to look at the general observation as well as the perineal observation. Now, in general observation, we have to check the gait and the posture. A woman's posture itself talks a lot. Okay, if she is confident, if she is not having any issue, her posture will be very, very authoritative, and it will be very good. But if she is having any inconveniences, okay, if she is suffering, say, from incontinence, then that will be shown on the body as well. Okay, she will be keeping away from social situations. She will not talk to people. The smell might be there. She might be more shy. All those things, and she'll have a flex posture. All those things have to be taken care of, and we have to think about when we are looking at the posture. Gait, especially if there is any problem with prolapse. Okay, we say a waddling gait with externally rotated hip. They'll have a waddling gait so that there is no rubbing. Okay, so this also can give us a lot of information about the person who is walking into your clinic. If she is having say incontinence, okay, the patients who have incontinence, severe incontinence specifically, they tend to take smaller step lengths. Okay, stride length also will be smaller. It will be adducted more than the hip posture, right? It will be more adducted. So all these things if you pick on all this gait analysis, that also can give us an idea what the person is suffering from. Okay, now coming to the perineal observation. Perineal observation are also of two types. Okay, one is static observation, one is dynamic observation. Static is when you are looking at the perineum when it's not doing anything, right? You're just observing all your mons pubis and vulva and vestibule and majora and minora and clitoris and vagina and anum and perineal body. You're just observing. You're not asking the patient to do anything else. Right? So in that, we'll be looking for 5 things, 5 S's. Okay, I'll come to 5 S's in the next slide. You'll be looking for any redness, any wound. Okay, there might be scratch marks because if there is any infection, then they tend to scratch. Okay, that nail marks might be there. Active wound might be there. Okay. There might be edema or a bulge. If it is a bulge, then you have to think about prolapse, right? And dynamic, we have active contraction and a cuff reaction. I'll explain in the next slide. So here it is the 5S. Okay, we have to look at the size, shape, skin, symmetry, and scar in the vulva. Okay, you have to look at the size of the majora, you have to look at the size of mainly the minora, you have to look at the shapes, you have to look at the skin, what is the skin color, what is the skin texture, whether it is symmetrical on both sides, whether any scars are present, like if there is a episiotomy scar or there is a renal perineal tear which have healed. All these things can be observed just in your static perineal observation. Okay, so this what you see here, it's actually cupcakes. I am sorry if I have spoiled cupcakes for you, but you can see the minoras in different shapes, different colors. All of this are normal. Okay, there are n number of, no two women are same. Okay, the minora is different in each woman, it is really different. Okay, so all of this are same, only thing you have to look at that point of time whether there is any problem in comparison on both the sides. Okay, so if why this is important, especially the size of the minora is important, is Bartholin's gland is there, it gets infected very fast. Okay, if it gets infected, then at the end of the minora, I think here I can show you, at the end of the minora there will be a bulge. Okay, then that is abnormal. Okay, so like that we can know many things just by observing the perineum itself. Now, this is different types of minora that you might come across if you are doing an assessment in women, depending on the width, the size, the length of the minora. But all of these are normal. Okay, all these shapes that you're seeing on the slide, it's completely normal. Each one will be different. Okay, so just because you see in buffalo women it's too big, okay, or in bear women it's too flappy, that doesn't mean that it is abnormal. Okay, or that there is a edema or fluid retention there. It is completely normal. Okay, these are completely normal. Fine. Now, dynamic observation, what you do is you get the patient either into a lithotomy position or into a modified lithotomy or into a modified crook-like position. The best position that we normally use is modified hook-like position, okay, where the patient actually takes the heel near to the buttocks and leaves the knee open, okay, so that the perineum will be seen really well. Okay, so what you do is ask the patient to contract. You don't help at all. Okay, you just ask the patient to contract the vagina as she would contract in case she is passing urine or trying to stop passing gas. Okay, just ask them to do that contraction and watch the perineum. Okay, now if there is an inward pull of the whole perineum is visible, okay, then that is a good sign. Fine. That is one. Okay, that is the voluntary contraction. Now coming to the cuff part. After you observe the voluntary contraction, you ask the patient to cuff. Okay, now during cuff, there should be a well coordinated contraction of the perineum as well. Okay, whenever you're cuffing, there should be a good contraction of the perineum as well. Okay, so that is your cuff reaction. Now, one more thing I wanted to tell is pelvic floor muscle rehabilitation is not meant only for females. It is meant for males as well. Okay, if the person is having any erectile dysfunction or if he's having any incontinence post post-surgery incontinence, or especially in COPD. If you take the COPD assessment and you ask them that when you are coughing, do you have incontinence? You have to check that with males also. Okay, they do have incontinence. So the same assessment and this thing is, exercise prescription is can be used for males as well. But I am more concentrating on females. Okay. Now on palpation. Now we have observed the perineum. Now we are going into palpation. We have two types of palpation. One is the external palpation and internal palpation. Okay, external palpation, you touch the perineal structures and see if there is any tenderness on the muscles, if there is any trigger point, any spasm of muscle, especially of bulbocavernosus. If there is a spasm, there might be dysmenorrhea and vaginismus, which the person is suffering from. Okay, so you have to touch and see the muscle, feel the muscle contour. Okay, not only the perineal muscles, you have to think about the adductors, okay, of the thigh as well as the abdominals. These both can also, if there is a muscular problem with these two muscles, it can also manifest as a groin pain or a perineal pain. So you have to check the adductors as well as the abdominals. Now, coming to the internal one. Don't do a internal palpation or transvaginal palpation unless and until you have a written consent. According to according to Indian laws, we physios can do a transvaginal palpation, but you need a written consent. Why no to a verbal consent? Because the person can actually go back on their word at any point of time. Okay, so if you have a written consent, make it a practice. If you're doing a transvaginal examination in your clinic or at your hospital setup, make it a point that they have a written consent signed, okay, telling that we have understood the procedure and we are giving okay for the procedure to be done. Okay, so that has to be taken, a written consent have to be taken. It's very, very important to safeguard yourself. Okay. Another thing is, explain the procedure to the patient. Now, if you ask a girl whether I can just put my fingers inside your vagina, no one is going to allow that. Okay, so explain them why that procedure is important to them and how that procedure can actually help you. Okay, so that has to be explained. The procedure itself has to be explained, what position they will be in, what will they feel. Okay, all these things have to be explained to the person, to the patient in language that she will understand. Okay, look for contraindication and indications. I'll come to contraindication and indication in the next slide. Okay, use sterile gloves, not the normal lattice gloves. Use sterile gloves. And if lubricants are to be used, then you can use them, but always check for any allergic reactions and stuff. Okay, so that is your internal examination tips for you to understand and do when you are having a transvaginal palpation, doing a transvaginal palpation. Now, transvaginal palpation, indications and contraindications. Indications are when there is vaginal laxity, okay, the vagina have become loose, or the person complains of fecal or urinary incontinence, okay, or is there any, sexual dysfunction, okay, then if there is any, pelvic or perineal pain, okay, and if there is any prolapse. So these are the situations where you can actually do a transvaginal palpation. Now, contraindications are when there is no written consent. Okay, don't touch the patient without having a written consent. 6 weeks postpartum, doesn't matter if it is LSCS or normal delivery or assisted delivery. 6 weeks postpartum, don't do a vaginal palpation. Okay, if there is severe infection like vaginitis, infections are there, then also don't do a transvaginal palpation. Instead, you refer them to a gynecologist. If the person is undergoing or currently having menstrual cycle, okay, it's really not hygienic. It can cause infections and it will be very uncomfortable for the lady as well. in pregnancies. In pregnancy, already it is compromised. Okay, already the vaginal environment changes, so high chances of infections are there. Do as many, even the gynec, they don't do any transvaginal palpations. They keep it to the minimum, bare minimum. Okay, so in pregnancy, it's okay. You can rehabilitate later, not during pregnancy. Don't do a transvaginal palpation. If we have any doubt of sexual abuse, if it is a MLC case, okay, don't do a vaginal palpation, okay, because then it might create issues with the MLCs. Okay, if the patient is under 18 years of age or sexually inactive, okay, or they don't give you a consent, then also don't use a don't do a transvaginal palpation. If the person have undergone recent surgery or radiotherapy, then also don't do it. Okay, chances of infections are very high, so these are vulnerable patients. Don't do any vaginal transvaginal palpations. So these are the indications and contraindications. I'll just run through it once more so that it goes really into your head. So indications: it is vaginal laxity, incontinence, sexual dysfunction, pelvic floor pain, and prolapse. If the pain is too bad, okay, it's unbearable, then also don't do it. Okay, contraindications are non-written consent, 6 weeks of postpartum, vaginitis, infection, menstrual cycle, pregnancy, sexual abuse, under 18 years of age, recent surgeries, or radiotherapy. Okay, I hope I'm audible.
Yes, madam.
Yeah,
Very much.
good. Okay. Now, if you're doing a transvaginal palpation, what position do you and the patient assume? Okay. Now, I'll be dealing with the patient position and the therapist position at the same time. The first one is modified crook lying position. I already explained to you. Come into the crook lying position. Pull the heel as close to the buttocks as possible. Knee falls onto both the sides. Okay, so that the perineum is extended. We were talking about the position, crook lying position, modified crook lying. It is being called modified lithotomy position also, but we do stick on to this one particular position, crook lying position. All of you know. Take the heel as close to the buttocks as possible and let the knees fall onto both the sides. Okay, so that the perineum is well exposed. The patient, the therapist can be on the side of the couch facing the patient, okay, and whichever prominent hand is there, that side you have to stand. Lithotomy position, with the couch extension, lithotomy couch is there. On that you can keep the legs, okay, and seated at the end of the couch. The therapist can be seated at the end out of the couch. Now this actually, it is good as far as the therapist is concerned, because we are not standing for a long period of time. There is a direct view into the perineum, okay, but it's not very comfortable for the patient. The last position is the Sims position. Sometimes what happens is females will be very uncomfortable, okay, lying in front of someone like that. So what we suggest is a Sims position. It's basically lateral decubitus position, and the therapist should be placed behind the patient. I'll show you the diagrams for that. So this one is a modified crook lying. The patient, the therapist is on the side and facing the patient. So if you are right-hand sider, then you can stand on the other side. Okay, right-hander, then you can stand on the other side. This is a lithotomy position. In this case, the patient will be at the end of the couch, so you can actually put in a seat and sit at the end of the couch. If you are planning for a prolonged period of time, and if you are giving biofeedback from the therapist hands, then lithotomy position is very good as far as the therapist is concerned, not as far as the patient is concerned. This one is called as the Sims position. Okay, a bit more turned than the lateral decubitus position. So the therapist actually stands here, stabilizes the pelvis, Okay, and from behind you enter the vagina. Now, if you go towards the coccyx, you will get the levator ani. So this particular diagram, you will get the one finger is being inserted into the vagina, and if you do this way at the upper end, then this way, okay, this way, then you're actually palpating your obturator internus, okay, and if you palpate this way towards the coccyx, then you are getting the levator ani. So this one also you have to keep in mind. So now, what all do? You explain everything. You put in a gloves. You make the person really comfortable. Okay. Whenever you are assessing the patient, make sure that you are in a room which is really well secured. Okay, there should not be people coming in and out of that room. Okay, this is a very sensitive period for the patient. Okay, even when you're doing the assessment and as well as if you're doing a rehabilitation, the room where you treat the patient should be well ventilated and well secured. Okay, no more than 2 people should be there in the room. 2 people also I don't actually recommend. I just be there, and if interns are learning, then I let them inside, but one at a time. Okay, not too many people. Take care of the privacy of the patient. Just because she's coming for a pelvic floor examination or a rehabilitation doesn't mean that okay, she can be exposed. Take care of the other parts. Okay, from her knee to her chest, please have a drape, something ready, so that the person's privacy is also maintained. Now, what do you check for? Okay, you have done a transvaginal palpation. What do you check for? You ask the person to do a voluntary contraction as she would do to stop urine passage. Okay, and depending on the contraction that we feel on our finger, okay, you can grade it. So that is called as the Oxford MMT scale. Okay, this is a modified Oxford MMT scale. So grade 0, you keep the finger in. Now please remember, Oxford MMT, modified Oxford MMT is 1-digit palpation. Okay, it's not two digit. You're not putting 2 fingers into the vaginal canal. You're putting only 1 finger. So you insert the finger and ask the person to contract. Now, if you don't feel any contraction, then that is called as the grade 0. If you find flicker of contraction, then it is called as the grade 1. Okay, mild or weak contraction, then that is grade 2. Grade 3 is moderate. Grade 4 is good, and grade 5 is strong with an inward pull. Now, if it is a strong one, right? You have, this is the vagina, you have put the finger in, ask them to contract. Okay, now what I do is, if only contraction is there, good enough. But if there is a contraction and an inward pull of my finger, okay, so that this distance actually reduces. Okay, you don't put the whole digit into the vagina, you just put 4 to 5 centimeters into the vagina, and then you can palpate it. So the whole finger doesn't go in. It goes only this much. Okay, so this distance, if it is reducing, then there is a good inward pull. Okay, so that is grade 5. Now, this I am sure all of you could have already come across, because MMT is there in second year, and it's very, very, very important in examinations. So I am sure this everyone could have come across. Now, the vagina is not only lax, sometimes it is tight. Okay, it is tight to such an extent that penetration is not possible. So they're having sexual dysfunctions like your vaginismus or dysmenorrhea. That is, dysmenorrhea is a painful penetration, and vaginismus is when penetration is absolutely not possible because of pain. Okay, so what happened is, in MMT, in this particular scenario, this is good. Okay, Oxford MMT is good. Now I'll introduce something new to you. This is called as the Height's MMT. Okay, HET apostrophe S, Height's MMT. There are a couple of things that I want to talk about Height. Height is a Indian physio. He's based in Ahmedabad. I-Free Institute. Okay, so he has come up with the new scale, right? This scale basically gives both your contraction as well as the relaxation, okay, component of it. So we'll see it. He was actually working in US and he's come back to India and he's serving in the field of women's health a lot. Okay, so this is a MMT that he is come up with. Okay, so grade 0. I'll start from grade 0. Grade 0 is the baseline tone. As you watch the vagina, what is the baseline tone of it? That is your grade 0. Okay. You insert you do a transvaginal palpation and you insert the finger inside. Okay, this is also a single digit palpation. Okay, not a double digit palpation. You insert one finger and ask the patient to do a contraction. Okay, maximum contraction. What we call as MVC. Okay, maximum voluntary contraction. So when you do that, if you feel the contraction from only one side, okay, then that is, if you do this, okay, insert, and you feel this contraction only from one side, it is called, it is grade 1. If you have a full circumference contraction, that is the whole finger can be gripped well, then it is grade 2. Okay. If it is gripped well, pulled up despite of me trying to come out, then it is grade 3. So grade 3 is the best contraction. Okay. Now coming down from baseline, grade -1 is inability to penetrate essentially your vaginismus. Okay. It is not possible for you to put your finger inside the vagina. Okay. Grade -2 is symptomatic penetration. You can put one finger, but it's very painful or tight, or the person is very uncomfortable. That is grade 2. Okay. Grade 3 is asymptomatic penetration. You can aram se go inside. Okay. Now, an ideal woman should go from -3, that is from the maximum relaxation, which which enables a penetration, to +3, okay, which gives the strongest contraction. So ideal women's vaginal health should be in between this. Okay, so that is Height's MMT and Oxford MMT. Now, what all investigations can be done? So we have taken our MMT grading also. Investigations, what can you do? You can do a ultrasound scanning to see the muscle movement, okay, and how the urethral neck is being displaced when you do the movement, okay. Or MRI also can be done, but the problem is USG as well as MRI is very expensive, okay, and it's not practical to be done to a patient on a daily basis, okay. So we have something called as perineometer. I have a perineometer here. This is a perineometer that we use, okay, and you can see we have plates on both the sides, okay, which gives us the good EMG feedback also, biofeedback also. So you can insert this into, I mean, it can be attached to the screen and you can insert this and give it, okay. So it becomes a good feedback for the patient as well. Or a volume sensitive catheter. I don't really use volume sensitive catheter. I feel the perineometer is better. I mean, the probe is better. I do have one here. Okay, this we can use for one patient only. So what we do is we can put in saline through it, and this particular bulb will be inside the vagina, and it will open up. Okay, so how much amount of saline has gone into the balloon, and that much amount of lax your vagina would be. So this is another method. Okay, so now coming to the main thing, we understood what is the strength of the person's pelvic floor muscle. Okay, you can use MMT, either Oxford or Height's MMT. Both are valid and reliable. That is done. And if you want to quantify what is the amount, then perineometer is also done. Then what to do? Okay, now that is the question, isn't it? Now, there is something called as perfect scheme given by Laycock in 2001. Perfect scheme is nothing but PERFECT. Okay. P standing for power. In his paper only, if you read the paper, he'll tell that I know power is not equal to strength, but I am calling it power. Okay. So P standing for power, that is taken from the MMT scheme. Okay. From the Oxford MMT scheme. Perfect scheme is based on Oxford MMT. Okay. So please have that in your mind. If you're doing an Oxford MMT, then you need to go with perfect. Okay. So perfect scheme. So you do you get the you do a transvaginal palpation, you ask them to contract, and you get the grade. Okay, in Oxford. Fine. And then endurance. Endurance is nothing but how long the person can hold that. Okay, how long, the time limit for the for which the person can actually hold the maximum voluntary contraction. Okay, that is your endurance. Now in perfect scheme, it actually gives a reduction of 35%. Up to 35% reduction in MVC is tolerated. Okay, so that is fine. But at least 65% of maximum MVC should be there. Okay. Now repetitions. Repetitions is how many times the person is able to repeat maximum NVC. That is, what is the NVC? What is the second? Say if we are going to, the client is able to hold it for 7 seconds. With that 7 seconds, how many times she can repeat it? Okay, so that becomes your repetitions. PER. Now F. F is the fast component. Now, as any skeletal muscle, even our pelvic floor muscle have slow twitch as well as your fast twitch fibers. Now, 30% of fast twitch and 70% of slow twitch fibers are there. Okay. Now, when you have a stress incontinence, okay, that is if I am coughing and the urine is dripping, okay, that is your stress incontinence. That can be controlled by your fast twitch fibers. So, even the fast number of contraction also need to be taken into care. Okay, if it's a urge incontinence that I'm having, or if it's a mixed incontinence that I'm having, I need to recruit more of the slow twitch fibers. Okay, so that I can hold on to it till the time I get to the bathroom. Okay, so that way, fast and slow have to be taken care of. It has to be there in our mind. So F is for how many fast contraction. P, E and R is for your slow twitch. F is for your fast twitch component of it. Okay. ECT is every contraction is timed. Each time we have to see whether the person is taken for, in the example that I told, it was 7 seconds. If the person is keeping that contraction for 7 seconds, at the end of 7 seconds, according to perfect scheme, you can give 4 seconds of rest period. Okay, and then again repeat it. Repeat the maximum voluntary contraction. Keep it for 7 seconds. Again break for 4 minutes. Like that, you have to do the repetitions. Am I clear? Do you want me to explain that anything in this again? Now, similarly, Heath is also given a SURF. Okay, SCRF. Here, strength denotes the strength or grade that you got in the Heath MMT. Okay, what is the strength? If it is +2 or +1 or +3, okay, what is the strength? Endurance is again the repetitions. At the time period for which the maximum contraction can be kept. But here a reduction is not allowed. Okay, reduction in the contraction time is contraction force is not allowed. There up to 35% reduction in MVC was allowed. Here it is not allowed. Okay. Now repetition is how many repetitions she can do with the maximum NVC without a drop. Okay. So that is your repetition. Fast contraction is again fast contractions without any hold time. You keep on doing fast contraction 1, 2, 3 like that. In 10 seconds we are going to see. What Heath has done is in 10 seconds, if you achieve 8, then it is considered normal. Okay, while in perfect, he doesn't give any specific number, but he is also looking at 10 seconds itself. Okay, so SERF, strength, endurance, repetition, and fast contraction. So this is called as Haigh's Surf Protocol. Okay. Now, what is the difference between both? The first one, power or the strength, Laylock have used Oxford MMT, Haigh has used Haigh's MMT. Okay. Endurance, time period for which maximum voluntary contraction is sustained. Here he is given a reduction of 35%. 35% of reduction in MVC is tolerated. So the mark is given to the person. In Haigh's surf, that is not given. Okay, only MVC should be done. If there is a reduction in the contractions power, then it is going to be discounted. Okay, repetitions. Number of repetitions up to 10 of a specific MVC, in which 35% of reduction is also allowed, with 4 seconds of gap. Okay, 4 seconds of rest period in between, so that the fibers don't fatigue easily. Okay, in Haigh's MMT and Haigh's surf protocol, number of repetitions of maximum MVC is taken. There is no rest period in between. Okay, you keep doing it, relax it for 1 second, and again do it. Okay, fast one, number of fast contraction or relaxation in 10 seconds. Okay, in 10 seconds, how many fast contraction and relaxation cycle is can be done without a hold period. Okay, Haigh have told that the same thing, number of fast contraction relaxation cycle in 10 seconds, but he is given a normal value. Out of 10, if you are able to do 8, you are good enough. Okay, so that is also given. So these are the difference between the two schemes. Now, how do you document this? Okay, you have to write somewhere. No, you have taken the score, everything. You're doing rehabilitation. At the end of the day, we should have a documentation so that we can go back and compare what have been done. Okay, so that has to be taken into consideration. So first itself, on the day of assessment, you write this document in P by E by R by F. Okay, that way you write the documentation. Okay, if it is perfect scheme, if it's the other one, S by E by R by F. Okay, like that you can document. Later at the end of the rehabilitation, you can come again and check, assess, and then you can progress or reduce, okay, depending on that. So for the documentation purpose, here I have given an example, 4 bar, 7 bar, 3 bar, 6, okay. What does it mean? The person has grade 4 in Oxford MMT. 7 seconds she is able to hold maximum voluntary contraction, and she is able to do it 3 times, 3 repetitions she is able to do it. So bar 3, and she is able to do 6 out of 10 fast contraction. So that is the meaning of 4 bar, 7 bar, 3 bar, 6. Okay. So 4 is MMT, power or strength. 7 is endurance. What is the seconds that is being held? 3 is the repetitions, how many repetitions, with 4 seconds of rest period in perfect scheme. Okay, and fast, if it is how many fast contractions is done in 10 seconds. So these can be documented well. Now, the fast contraction should be done after the slow contraction. Give 1 minute break, 1 minute rest period, and then you have to do the fast contraction. Okay, now how do you progress? Okay, 3 components are there. First is identification and contraction of the correct muscle. Whether you have identified the correct muscle and if the person is contracting. If the therapist is doing, then there is no problem, because we know whether there is a good contraction against your finger. Or if you are using a periniometer, then also there is no issue, because you are going to get a live feedback. Okay, so identification is not the issue. But if the person has to identify by herself, then what do? You keep a mirror in front of the perineum and see the contraction inside. Okay, that is one method of identification. So make sure that you're doing the correct muscles. Now, one more thing in correct identification and contraction of the correct muscle is Often, if the person is having a weak pelvic floor muscle, then there are chances of them recruiting your adductors or abdominals or gluteus, okay, the buttocks. So if they are contracting any of these, then it is not going to work out. So when you're giving pelvic floor muscle exercise, it should be only to the pelvic floor muscle exercise in the phase 1, okay. In phase 1, it is only for your pelvic floor muscle exercise. You make the patient understand what it feels like, how long she can hold on to it, how many times she can repeat it, how many times she can keep repeating the fast contraction. So once that is there in the patient's mind, then you graduate into phase 2. In phase 2, you start recruiting muscles depending on the patient's condition. Okay, if the patient is having an incontinence, say, okay, you could have heard about NAC technique. NAC technique is nothing but when you know that you're going to sneeze, you actively contract the pelvic floor muscle. Okay, this can be reinforced with the adduction of the thighs as well. Okay, so what do? We add in adductors. We add in if the person is having a sexual dysfunction, then we add in rectus and the gluteus. Okay, so recruit muscles which are supposed to be working together along with the pelvic floor muscle exercise, but only after the person actually have graduated to 10 by 10, that is 10 seconds she can hold and 10 repetitions she can do. Only after that you start recruiting the other muscles. Okay, and at the end of the day, what do you want? You can't ask the patient to keep on coming to us for a session. Okay, so if she is able to have a good coordinated pelvic floor muscle along with the respiration, along with ADL, then we are good to go. Okay, she can be discharged from our point of view. Okay, if she is if you listen to your body, okay, just calm down and listen to your body. Whenever you're breathing out, there is a contraction from your pelvic floor muscle as well. Okay, so if that is achieved with each and every time you breathe, then it is good enough. Okay, so that is our green signal, that is our goal. Okay, so first is the identification and contraction of the correct muscle. Once they graduate to 10 by 10 in that, then you can start recruiting the functional muscles according to the person's condition. Okay, and then you can discharge the patient once she starts recruiting the muscles properly, and there is reduced symptoms, not reduced symptoms, the symptoms have gone away fully, and the person is able to do a well coordinated, well timed contraction along with all the ADL and the respiration. Okay, so that is your progression components. Now, if it's HAID's perfect scheme, then how do you progress? Okay, as in document, I have given you the same example. Okay, 4/7/3/6, that is, the person is having a good contraction, that is grade 4 contraction. 7 seconds she is able to hold it, 3 times she is able to repeat it, and 6 times she is able to do the fast contraction. If such a patient comes to you, according to perfect scheme, if you are going, what do? You start with the current situation, that is, she is able to do 7 seconds hold, 7 seconds hold with 3 times repetition. So you ask the patient to do 7 seconds hold, 3 times repetition with 4 seconds of gap in between. Okay, once she is comfortable with that, you graduate, okay, to the next step. 7 seconds, 4 repetitions, 4 seconds of break, okay, in between repetitions. Like so, you graduate till you reach your 10 repetition. That is 7 seconds you hold it, and you keep on increasing the repetition with 4 seconds of rest period in between. Okay, now once you reach the 10 second repetition, if you see here, I have increased the seconds. Okay, 10 times repetition is remaining the same, but 8 seconds of endurance. I'm working on the endurance of the muscle. Okay, so I graduate to 8 seconds. Again, rest period remains the same. Again, it graduates to 9 seconds, 10 repetitions. Like that, you have to reach 10 seconds with 10 repetitions. I think there is a mistake there on the second line, but you have to reach 10 seconds, 10 repetition, 4 rest period. Now, you all are very comfortable with overloading principle. You know what is overloading, you know what is adaptation, or you know what is deconditioning. Even the pelvic floor muscle undergoes deconditioning. That is the reason you have to keep building it up. Okay, 10 seconds, 10 repetition is done. Now what to do? You reduce the rest period. Okay, you work on the rest period. 4 seconds rest period was given in between 10 repetitions. You reduce to 3. Again, you reduce to 2. Again, you reduce to 1 and keep it. Okay, so after each of these repetitions, each bout of the repetition, you are supposed to work on your fast contraction also. Okay, after each bout, you give 1 minute rest and then ask them to do the fast contraction. Okay, up to 10, in 10 seconds. So from 6, ask them, push them to give a 7th contraction. Okay, 1/7, she's able to do 7th, push her towards 8. Okay, like that you have to reach till at least 9 to 10 in perfect score. Okay, now 10 seconds she's reached, 10 repetition is also done. I have reduced the rest period also. Now what do? I graduate to the second phase. I change the position of the patient. So all this while she was lying down, okay, she was in crook line. Now I'm going to change the position and recruit more muscles. Okay, I'm going to put her into quadruped position, give exercises. Okay, sitting and standing. Okay, only just pelvic floor muscle, that also fine. If you want to recruit more functional ones, that is also fine. Okay, so I'm going to change the position from crook line. I'm going to go into a quadruped position. Now in quadruped position, I'll come to it later in detail. Okay, in quadruped position, you have to make sure that the pelvic is posteriorly tilted. Okay, and ultimately when they have been doing all these exercises, if they have graduated from 10 seconds to 10 repetitions to 2 seconds of rest period, and you have been working on different positions also, they will be having a well coordinated ADL. How do you know? You watch the perineum. Okay, so that is your perfect scheme. Coming to Haig's protocol, I have given 2 bar, 7 bar, 3 bar, 6. That is 2, grade 2. Why I have taken out 4 here? Because in Haig's MMT, we have only 3 grades. Okay, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3 for contraction. Grade -1, 2, 3 for relaxation. Okay, so here I have given 2. He is able to, she is able to do 7 seconds of hold, repeat it 3 times, and 6 times she is able to repeat the fast contraction. How do we progress? Okay, here we step down from the seconds. Okay, instead of 7 seconds, you step down to 6 seconds. Okay, and you go forward with the 5 repetitions. So in 6 seconds, she can actually do 5 repetitions. Okay, increase the repetition. Then from there, you keep on increasing. You don't touch the repetition, but you increase the time for which you're holding the muscle, you are holding the contraction. Haig have not given any normal rest period as a perfect have given, but we can allow a rest period of 2 seconds max. Okay, so 6 seconds, 5 repetitions, 7 seconds, 5 repetitions. Like that, you reach till 10 seconds, 5 repetitions. Once you reach 10 seconds, 5 repetition, you start with the 10 seconds, 6 repetitions. Like that, you have to reach 10 seconds, 10 repetitions. Okay, 6 seconds, 5 repetition. Like that, slowly, slowly, slowly you increase. You have reached 10 seconds with 5 repetition. Keep 10 second contraction. Go to 6 repetition. Again, go to 7 repetition. So forth and so on. 10th repetition. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Okay. All right. In between all these things, don't forget about your fast contraction. It should never be forgotten. On basis of overloading principle, the person is able to do 6. Then you try and get a 7th contraction in between 10 seconds. Okay. Once she is comfortable with 7, go to 8. Once she reaches 8, so, according to Haig's MMT, it is fine. Okay. So, then after this, what do? Okay, you have to go to the second step. So in second step, in HATES, you are going to add functional movement at the hip. Okay, so if it is incontinence, as I told you, adductors can be taken up. If it is sexual dysfunction, then the sexual muscles, that is the abdominis, rectus abdominis, transverse abdominis, gluteus, and your thigh muscles can be recruited and worked upon. I'll tell you some of the examples also. Okay, again, once that is also done in crook lying position, what do? You go and change the position. Okay, you put them into quadruped position. You make the positioning more challenging. Okay, once that is also done, you introduce resistance training, that is vaginal coins can be given. Okay, and with that they have to stand. Okay, it should be in gravity dependent position and hold on to the vaginal weight. Okay, but I really don't much do the vaginal resistance training, because females are just not comfortable with having many things inside their vagina, so I don't do this. Instead, I ask them to, I keep changing their positions, I keep challenging them on basis of that. Okay, ultimately we should have a well coordinated contraction when we are breathing in and out. Okay, so that is SURF's protocol. I hope I am clear. It is little confusing. In SURF, you come down a bit. Okay, in perfect score, you start from where the patient is. In SURF's protocol, you come down a bit, increase the repetitions. Okay, like that. Now, as I told you, adductors can be included. So in this particular position, you can, she's doing a pelvic floor contraction as well as the adductors are being trained. Okay. The other one is she's doing a heel slide. Okay. In crook lying position, she's actually contracted her pelvic floor muscle and she's doing a heel slide. This one you can see it is a very well maintained weighted squat. Okay, she is already graduated into squatting stage. She is finished with air squats, but we have not attempted a jump squat for her. But we have introduced weighted squats. Okay, very good form. Her strength was really good as she progressed. So you can see that the toe is not, the knee is not crossing the toe. The hamstrings is fully engaged, back is nice and good extended, chest is popped out, and the weight is there. Okay, now coming to the quadruped position. Normally when we say quadruped position, we attempt a anterior pelvic tilt. Okay, like this. You can see the curve here. Okay, but in case of pelvic floor muscle exercises, if you want the pelvic floor to be engaged, you should actually do a posterior pelvic tilt. Here you can see, okay, it's in a straight line. There is an active posterior pelvic tilt. That anterior pelvic tilt is taken care here. Okay, so you can simply put the position patient in this and then ask them to hold the contraction. Okay, for 10 seconds, 10 repetitions. Once she is able to do that, we go to the next one. You add on the leg and hand. First, you can go stepwise. You can add the hand, then the leg, like that also you can do. So now here what I want to say is the first image, she is having a full range of motion, but she is gone for a anterior pelvic tilt. So the pelvic floor muscle will not be contracted. But here the posterior pelvic tilt is maintained, even though the extension is not much. Okay, but it's very challenging. Okay, very challenging posture to hold. So the posterior pelvic tilt is actually maintained. You can see the reduction in the range. Okay, and she's actually struggling to balance herself. So from crook lying progression, you put the patient into crook lying. You have come to 10 seconds with 10 repetition. You have reduced the rest period also. Now what to do? You can add on heel slides. I already showed you. Crook lying march is a very good one. I don't have the photos of clients, but this is a crook lying march. Okay, you take one leg up to 90 degrees, come down, the other leg up. Okay, it can be progressed into a crook lying march with alternate upper limb movement. So along with that, you can come back into the flex position if the right leg is being marched, the left hand has to go into full flexion. Okay, full flexion this way. So that also can be added. Now, the end point of this would be introducing a dead bug. Dead bug start point is 90 degrees of flexed hip, 90 degrees of flexed knee. Okay, and hands are 90 degrees of flexion at the shoulder. Now, from this point, you take one leg down, the other opposite hand into full 180 degrees of flexion. So, but the leg, neither the hand, neither the upper limb nor the lower limb touches the ground. Okay, you can see the gap here. Around 1 inch of gap or 2 inches of gap is needed. Okay, so this way. And then you come back, take the other leg and the other hand. Okay, so that is called as the dead bug. All the time contracting your pelvic floor muscles. Okay, so here also that posterior tilt is there because there is no lordosis here. You can see. Okay, so posterior tilt is maintained. Here also she is maintaining it. Okay. This is the quadruped position I just wanted to show you. I have already shown you in a client also. So this is the quadruped position, 90 degrees, posteriorly nicely tilt. There is no lordosis here. So it is not anteriorly tilt, straight line. Okay, 90 degrees, right under the shoulder comes your wrist. Okay, so that is a quadruped position. In this itself, doing pelvic floor tightening is difficult. Okay, then you can, if they are comfortable with 10 seconds, 10 repetition in this position, you can add on things. You can make it more challenging. One hand up, one leg extension. The ultimate one, what we do is called as the bird dog crunches. That is, from the recline position, you come inward. Okay, opposite elbow to the knee, and then go into a full Superman. All the time maintaining, not full Superman, sorry, full flexion of hand and extension of hip, all the time maintaining the posterior pelvic tilt. Okay, so that is one exercise. That is one way of progression. Sitting to standing, you can initially give the sitting to standing in a chair. Okay, chair sitting, when you sit, you relax. When you stand up, you contract. Okay, so that is concentric contraction. Again, from standing to sitting, when you do, keep the pelvic floor muscle contracted and then sit. So that gives you eccentric contraction. Okay, so that is one method. Once they are comfortable doing this, you can graduate to a air squat. Okay, where knee should not go in front of toe, and she should be doing, I think, better than this. That other girl was doing better. Okay. Then you can introduce that into a jumping squat or a weighted squat. So this is the progression of sitting to standing. Now, tips. What are other tips? Main, the form while you exercise should be really good. Okay, engage your pelvic floor muscle. Pelvic tilt should be maintained throughout. All the other exercises, forms should be really kept in mind. Okay, you can do a plank. There is no issue. So such things should be done. Repeated movements should be avoided. As in, you can't keep on doing squats. Okay, one, it gets boring. Two, the patient will not come back. Three, they might end up with knee problems. So you keep shifting between exercises and incorporating pelvic floor muscle into everything. Okay, so another question that I often get is, can you incorporate into cardio? You can keep it contracted, but not throughout the session. Okay, you have to relax it in between. But I would suggest a strength training along with a pelvic floor muscle training than the cardio. Okay, make the session really interesting, answer all their questions. Heavyweight training. This heavyweight I'm talking about, snatch and power snatch and hang clean and all those stuff. Okay, so heavyweight training should be taken care of. If they are doing it, then it should be done in the correct method with the correct treatment weight also. So that should be taken care of. Caution should be given. Do not give anything that increases intra-abdominal pressure soon after delivery. Okay, do not start sit-ups, do not start V holds. Okay, this increases the IAP too much that the pelvic floor gives away. Okay, do not start dead weights. Okay, all these things, it gives too much of pressure on your it increases the pressure of your intra-abdominal pressure, and it increases the workload on the pelvic floor muscle. It can actually precipitate incontinence. There are so many of them coming at the end of 3 or 4 months, because now this Kareena Kapoor fad is there, that as soon as you deliver the kid, you have to look yummy and trim and everything. So they will go and join some gym. From gym, what do? They do heavy lift, okay, which increases the intra-abdominal pressure, which can actually cause the pelvic floor muscle, which is already tired, already not strong, to give away, okay, and precipitate a incontinence. Educate the patient. Normally people don't know about pelvic floor muscle, okay, how important it is to your well-being. Okay, both whether it is incontinence, or if it is a sexual dysfunction, or if it is a fecal incontinence, it's very, very important. So tell them what the pelvic muscle do, how it is, where it is. I find hammock also a little bit crazy. Like, if it is a person who knows the medical terms, I can tell, okay, from pubis to coccyx. But for a client, they don't know. So what I say is, it's like another pad inside. Okay, the napkin pad, it's like another pad inside your tummy. Okay, which is taking all the pressure. Right. So educate your patient really well. Okay, before going into, okay, so everywhere when we talk about exercise prescription, we have to have a fit. In pelvic rehab, no one has given fit as such. This is taken from different studies, where I have looked into how much frequency they have given, what is the intensity that they have been doing, what is the time limit that they are working on, and what type of exercise is being done, all those things, and I have put forward a table. Okay, so the frequency, if you're targeting only PFM, you can go up to 4 to 6 times. If once they get to know what is the contraction, then they can go 4 to 6 times. 7 days a week it can be done, because it's a flat muscle. It gets tired also fast, it recovers also fast. Okay, so smaller sessions, multiple sessions, that is what works. Okay, intensity would be 65 to 100 of 100% of maximum voluntary contraction, that I have already explained. Time, it will take hardly 5 to 10 minutes if you're targeting only pelvic floor muscle exercises. Okay, so that much time should be given for targeted training. Type, you're working on the strength and endurance of your pelvic floor muscle contraction. Now, if you're superimposing it with other exercises, then 1 session per day, 3 to 5 days per week can be done. Again, 65 to 100% MVC. I told you, with cardio, I really don't advise them. I advise them to keep it consciously tight, but not to do a training. But along with strength training, any of the strength training, body weight training exercises, or free weight training exercises, we can add in a pelvic component as well. Okay, that should not be more than 30 to 45 minutes, including your warm up and your cool down period. You can work on strength, endurance. Cardio, I'm not that happy with. I don't ask them to keep on contracting it when you're doing Zumba. That is not possible. I ask them to be aware of it. Okay, so that is your fit. Now, before going into I think the next slide is the questions. Before going into the questions, one thing I wanted to tell. What if the patient is MMT grade 2? What do you do? Okay, so the patient is not actually able to do a good contraction. There is only a mild contraction. Okay, what do you do? What you can do is, you put the patient into gravity assisted position. Okay, how do you keep the position gravity assisted? Now, when the pelvic floor is like this, when it contracts, okay, pelvic floor muscle is like this, when it contracts, it comes up. Okay, now imagine that in crook line. Okay, it's coming up into the abdomen. Okay, now I have to make that a gravity dependent position. How do I do that? I take my hip above my heart level. Okay, so you can give a supported bridge position. Okay, put them into a supported bridge position, ask them to contract. That way you are putting the muscle into a gravity assisted position and contracting it. Okay, so that way you can do. Fine. So this is the FIT principle. I think I am coming to the end of today's presentation.
There was a question in the chat box. Would you like to read or shall we read?
Can you read?
Yeah, ma'am. First question is from Ria. How much months postpartum weightlifting workout can be advisable, ma'am?
Okay, weightlifting should be started very, very slowly. As I told you, anything which increases your intra-abdominal pressure should be actually discouraged. Okay, so you work on targeted muscle, you work on your rectus abdominis and you work on your transverse abdominis. That is going to really give a very good effect. If the person is very athletic and they want to come back into training, okay, we start the PNC right from day one. Okay, whether they have undergone a normal delivery or cesarean, we have a protocol. So we started day one. Around day 30 days, we increase a bit of exercise endurance and everything. Okay, slowly. We do give a bit of weight training for the strength component. The dumbbells can be used. Okay, it can be used as a superimposed exercises, especially we taken the baby's thing also into consideration. Mothers don't want to go away from their baby, so we give it a exercise protocol to be done at home also. Okay, but heavy weight, if they are talking about deadlift and all, then I would suggest them to get all the other core muscles really strong. Okay, and if you're able to contract your pelvic floor muscle 10 seconds for 10 repetitions with your weighted squat, around 6 kgs of weighted squat, you can go in for a heavy weight lift. But forms, please be very careful about the form. Your each exercise have its own form, so please be very, very careful when you do lift a heavy weight. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Next question is from Pradeepa. Can you please explain the gravity assisted position once again?
Yes, gravity assisted position is, see, crook lying position. I'm lying down like this. Let me just pull up that. Okay, so this the second one, she is essentially in crook lying position and she is doing a heel slide. Right now, this is gravity eliminated position because gravity is not really working on it. To put the patient into a gravity assisted position, you take the patient into a bridging and a supported bridging. That is, you could have seen the wedges. Okay, I don't have a picture of it, but there are wedges or pillows you can keep under the buttocks. Okay, so the buttocks come up, the hip comes up. Okay, hip should be above the heart level. If in this case the hip will move, the hip will move up, okay, above the heart level, and it should be well supported. You can use pillows or wedges and well supported.
Fine,
so
ma'am. Next
puts into a gravity assisted position. Yeah.
Next is from Priya. When we need to stretch pelvic floor?
Okay, stretching pelvic floor muscle is entirely a different concept. This is what we were talking about was lax vagina. Okay, so when something is already lax, you don't go and stretch it further. Stretching can be done if there is a spasm in the muscles. I told you about ischiocavernosus, IC and BC. Muscles, okay, bulbous cavernosus and ischiocavernosus. If they have a spasm, it ends up in the person having a dyspareunia or a vaginismus. In such condition, there can be a relaxation technique during delivery time. Stage 1 of delivery, actually we can teach relaxation techniques. Okay, if you go into the relaxation techniques, that is another 2 hours topic actually, but these are the situations where you need relaxation. One for treatment of vaginismus, where penetration is not at all possible and you dilate the vagina. For the dilation to happen, all the muscles should be relaxed. So in that case, you can give a stretching, and in dyspareunia and later into your pregnancy time.
Yes, ma'am. Next one is from Pranjali. Ma'am, how to differentiate between fast and slow twitch muscle working?
I didn't get you. What?
How to
Voice is
differentiate
breaking.
Yes.
between fast and slow twitch muscle working?
Okay. So if you hold on to the who was it? Chandramohan sir, who was it? Who's the person?
Who is
Pranjali.
Okay. So the person who's asking me the question, just close your eyes and contract your pelvic floor muscle, as I told you, as if you are stopping your urination. Okay, and you hold it for some time. Okay, that is your slow muscle fibers which are working. Okay, but if you are sneezing or coughing and your urine is not going out, that is all thanks to your fast muscle. Okay. Basically, we can make 100% sure by holding, you are making the slow twitch muscles work, and by fast contraction and relaxation, you are making your fast twitch muscles work.
Yes, ma'am. Next is from Jeffin. In general, approximate time period taken for complete rehab of pelvic floor.
It depends on the patient and which phase she is in. If it is identification and correct contraction of the muscle, then it takes hardly 10 to 15 minutes for just the contraction of the pelvic floor muscle. But if you are adding functional muscles, if you are adding on functional training also to it, it can go up to 45 minutes to 1 hour.
Yes, ma'am. Next one is from Kajal. In case of vaginismus, is pelvic floor contraction is indicated?
Pelvic floor contraction is not indicated in vaginismus. We want the pelvic floor muscles to relax. Okay, vaginismus is when everything is tight. There is no penetration possible at all. Nothing, not even a finger goes in. Okay, so we don't want again more contraction there, again more tone there. So we want it to be loose. We want relaxation there. So slowly we introduce 1 finger at a time, 2 finger at a time, or vaginal dilators, what we call, that we can introduce and teach them how to relax it. If I talk about it, it will be too long a session. Maybe we can think about another webinar on vaginismus.
Yes, madam. Yes, of course. We got some topics.
Yeah. Any other questions? I got the question where can these perfect or surf protocol applied for pelvic spinal cord injury patients? Is that the question, sir? Yes. So spinal cord injury patients also, depending on what type of injury it is. If you were doing a pelvic floor muscle strengthening, if the I think you will be knowing the spinal cord injury, and there is a great connection between spinal cord injury and incontinence. So if we do apply this to the patient, it would be nice. It would be really good. You can apply it as far as pelvic floor muscle strengthening is actually indicated in such patients. Okay, can electrotherapy modality be used for pelvic floor muscle training with vaginal electrodes in case patient have significant weakness? If in MMT the grade is grade 0 or HATES it is grade 0, then you can think about electrical stimulation with Faraday current with vaginal electrodes, or you get a probe like this itself. So you can think about it if the grade is too low. But as soon as a flicker comes in, or as soon as a contraction is possible, you go with the contraction, because more than electrical stimulation, it's always the exercises which work. What is the difference between HATES MMT and HATES and Oxford MMT? See, in Oxford MMT, the grading, if you see, grade 1 to 5 it is there. Okay, grade 0 to 5 it is there. Grade 0 there is no contraction. Okay, I'll just pull up that slide so that. Okay, so I'll just pull this up. So if you see, grade 0 is there, no contraction. Grade 1, flicker of contraction, only a flicker is there. Grade 2, weak or mild contraction. Grade 3 is moderate. Grade 4 is good contraction, and grade 5 is strong contraction. Now, the problem with Oxford is that my mild might be moderate for you. So it is very subjective scale. Okay, what I infer to be a weak contraction might be inferred as a moderate contraction in case of a different tester. So in that case, we really don't know, or the person who is rehabilitating the patient should stay with the patient throughout. Okay, so you can't hand over your patient to someone else because they'll not, the grade might change. Okay, it's very subjective. Now, Oxford MMT gives you only contractions. It doesn't talk about relaxation at all. Okay, only contraction. Hates MMT, baseline is 0, upward, okay, is your contraction, downward is your relaxation. So up is your contraction, downside is your relaxation. Here it is little more less subjective, because when you are putting inserting one digit into the vagina, right? If you are able to feel a contraction in one side, then it becomes grade 1. So I feel the same contraction as you are feeling, okay, but only one side. So that is grade 1. Grade 2, if the person is able to hold the whole digit that we are giving, okay, if they're able to hold it wholly like this, okay, full circumference is possible, circumference contraction is possible, it is grade 2. Grade 3 is full circumference is there, inward strong pull is there, and even if I try to take my hand out, it is not possible. So that is grade 3. So Hates give contraction as well as relaxation. Now if you come to grade -1, -2 and -3, -1 is inability to penetrate. Okay, no matter what I do, I'm not able to penetrate. That is called the vaginismus condition. Okay, grade -2 is I'm able to penetrate, but it's very tight or it's very painful for the patient, very uncomfortable for the patient. And grade 3 is asymptomatic, like you can penetrate without any pain and come out. Okay, so that is the difference between Hates and Oxford MMT. Hates MMT gives you SURF protocol, and Oxford MMT gives you perfect score. That's all. Perfect ski. That's all. Can women do skipping? Yes, they can do skipping. Is there any effect of pelvic floor muscle exercises on periods, PCODs and irregular menstruation? Yes, you need pelvic floor muscle to be really good. More than this, even your rectus abdominis and transverse abdominis tend to have trigger points in case of PCODs, okay, which causes the painful periods. Okay, so that also can be looked at. What treatment exercise can we do in yeast infection? That is not our forte. It is a gynecologist forte. You don't give any exercise, you don't give any treatment, you just refer them to a gynecologist. Then can women do skipping? Yes, we can do skipping. Thank you. Thank you. How is sensory re-education for perineal structures? Okay, that is a very vast topic again. Sensory re-education, as much as possible, when you do a good contraction, the sensory re-education actually happens. But if there is any other neurological issues, then you need to look into it. The neurological part also needs to be answered. So that is an entirely different forte actually. Can any exercises, many exercises of pelvic floor include knee? How can we design for, okay, whenever you're deciding any, okay, as many exercises of pelvic floor muscle include knee, how can we design for patient with ONE along with urinary incontinence? Okay, so we didn't jump right into the functional method. ONE patient, I don't think she'll be able to do, the person should be around 50 plus. So she'll not be able to do much of the exercises, the functional training what I showed you. Okay, the deep squats and jump squats, so forget about it. All those things we can't do. We have something called as low impact exercises for knee conditions. Okay, you can do the heel slides, you can do adduction and abduction along with a crook line position, you can do a bridging along with it, you can put them in the plank. Okay, so all these extra exercises are there where it doesn't put any too much of pressure on the knee. So I wouldn't prefer you to go into deep squats for a ONE patient. Okay, so such conditions you have to be little careful. That's all. Good book for today's topic. Books are not there. Hatesa do have a book coming up. I think because of the lockdown and all, the publication is stopped because of that. As soon as it has come across, I can send the details to Chandramohan sir and he can give it to you. Can you study materials? I'll send you some of the perfect scheme. I can send you the link to the study. I mean the paper that was published. That I can do. Hates protocol. Two publications are supposed to be happening. It's currently happening because of the lockdown. It's been taking a little bit of time. Other things you will find in Jill Mandel and even Carolyn Kistner, the new edition has gynecology in that. Okay, in that it talks about a little bit of relaxation and all.
Yeah. I would like to thank our today's resource person, Regisha TR, for her valuable knowledge she shared with us, right from anatomy to the indications, contraindication, a detailed assessment to the management protocols, which we were not known. I am sure we will be using it in our daily practice. I would also like to thank Dr. Chandramohan sir, Dr. Rupesh, and Professor Duna for arranging such a wonderful webinar series full of information and knowledge. Again, I would like to thank for such a informative webinar.
Thank you, Smriti. Thank you all the participants. Thank you very much, madam. It was a lengthy session, but it was very much informative.